Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here in London. I was actually here back in March. But before I begin, I have to ask. From what I hear, the name GitHub, that must sound really funny to you, right? You can be honest. Like, why would anyone want to build a site that's the hub of unpleasant people? Well, I'm glad you do like our site, and I'm glad you're here. You stuck with us, and I thank you on behalf of GitHub. Now, onto the matter, GitHub beyond the browser. So when you use GitHub, you spend a lot of time in the browser. You review pull requests, you look at profiles, you might argue the value of semicolons or lack thereof in issue comments endlessly, but that assumes that the code is already hosted up there on GitHub. But before it's hosted, when the code is on your machine, you spend a lot of time with Git. And again, I don't mean an unpleasant person, though that depends where you work. I mean the command line. In fact, an alternative title for this talk could be GitHub Beyond the Command Line. How many of you here are really strong with Git? Show of hands. Okay, a few of you. How many of you struggle with Git? Okay, some of the same hands are up, right? Excuse me. How does one Git anyways? Well, the answer lies in this XKCD comment. This is Git. It tracks collaborative work on projects through a beautiful distributed graph theory tree model. Cool, how do we use it? No idea, just memorize these shell commands and type them to sync up. If you get errors, save your project elsewhere, delete the work, and download a fresh copy. Right? This is the mental model of Git that a lot of people who use Git every single day have. It shows the challenge for newcomers when they first approach Git. It can be very intimidating. And for these folks, Git can be, well, a Git. In this talk, I'm going to cover the work that my teams are doing to make Git and GitHub more approachable. We build tools that slot into the way you want to work. And in some cases, these tools make it so you don't need Git if you really don't want it. But for the most part, they act as a bridge between Git, GitHub, and the tools that you're using every day. And they bridge the gaps. They don't replace these tools. They don't replace Git. After all, I personally still love using Git, warts and all. But sometimes I need a little help. So first, a little about me. My name is Phil Haack, and I know what you're thinking. What a great name for a software developer, Phil. I'm on Twitter, and I keep a blog. I got my first computer when I was around 5 or 6, and as you can see, I looked a little old for my age back then. That is a TRS-80 color computer for those who are not as old as I am. And I've been in love with computers ever since, and I've always wanted others to have the same opportunity to enjoy this field as I do. I recently learned from 23andMe, which is the genetic testing site, that I'm 16% British, which explains my love of football, or your football, and my wonderful British accent. And at GitHub, I'm the director of engineering for client applications. So this is a group that consists of 4 teams listed here. First, we have Atom, a text editor you know and love. Just last week, we announced a new beta that includes Git and GitHub integration. Desktop, which Chris had referred to in his keynote, a cross-platform GUI for Git and GitHub released last week. It's the next generation of our pre-existing clients, which used to be separately built for Mac and Windows. But now they're both built on Electron, a platform that lets you use web technologies to build cross-platform applications. And as I mentioned, Atom and Desktop are now built using Electron. We're not the only ones building on it, though. A lot of other companies are making huge investments in Electron. We've seen Slack, Microsoft is building on it. And in fact, recently we learned that Tidal, the music company by Jay-Z, is building their music, or built their music player on it. So I like to imagine Jay-Z and Beyonce pair programming on Electron. That could happen. And then the last team is editor tools. So this team builds extensions for existing editors such as Visual Studio and Unity. And GitHub for Unity, GitHub for Visual Studio, GitHub for Unity. I know it sounds like a benefit festival, but it's actually a plugin. So here's what we believe. We want to extend GitHub to where developers write software. We believe that in order to be where developers build software, we need to be everywhere software is built. as Chris had mentioned, we need to go where you are. We need to meet you where you are. Then the reason we want to be everywhere is we genuinely want to help developers have a good time when they're writing code and using GitHub. We want to make it more approachable and more productive. We want to build tools that fit the way you work, and we believe that GitHub is much more than just the command line or the browser. To demonstrate my point, I've concocted this wild scenario. It's a little story that may feel a little familiar if you've written software as part of a team. So imagine we have a software team named TBD, that's the actual team name, and they're building a to-do app. Like many opinionated developers out there, they hate every to-do list app out there, so they decided they had to build their own. And this app requires a backend service, a front-end registration website, and for some reason an Easter egg where you can play a game. They're going to require developers, designers, documentation writers, testers, support, lawyers, and others to all work together. And this is where we begin our story. So I will switch here, if I can. All right. OK, great. That's working. So here's the front end to the to-do app. This is a repository. It's a simple Electron app. And I forgot to mention the listed names there are these various personas that I'm going to take as I go through this. And so we have this to-do app that's written in Electron. This is the front end. And it's talking to backend services, so you can see don't forget things. Pretty straightforward, right? So now I'm Don the designer. And I need to go to pull requests, and I see that, a little slow. I see that someone's made a pull request, design changes for Don. Oh no, it's the manager. He's like, hey Don, I'm not a designer, but I figured how hard could it be? Here's my suggestions for sprucing up the app. Oh boy, I love it when managers decide they know how to design, right? Now here's the thing. If I could review the code changes right here in GitHub, but I don't know about you, but when I look at CSS, I can't necessarily translate what's that going to look like when I'm actually running the app. And what I really want to do is go here and run this set of Git commands and get this code up in the cloud onto my local machine. Well, what not a lot of people realize is that if you have desktop installed, I'm going to zoom in here. Whoops, sorry. We have this nice, open this in GitHub desktop. So rather than running that set of 3 or 4 commands, I'm going to just click this button, and you see on Windows and Mac, the experience is slightly different, but it's saying, oh, open GitHub Desktop. And that happened really quickly, but I want you to notice right here in the top there, I'll zoom in again, it's on the branch of the pull request now. It pulled that code down, switched to that pull request branch, so now I can actually go and run this app. So I'm going to go npm start, and this is an Electron app again. Pretty straightforward. And oh no, this is terrible. So I've seen the design that the manager is trying to do design. It's got Comic Sans. As Don the designer, I need to help this design out. So what I'm going to do is create a new branch in desktop. So I'm going to go File, New Branch. And we're going to call this Design Fixes. And then I can pick which branch I want to target. So I'm going to make these changes against these fixes that my manager had submitted, and I'll create this branch. And now I can go to my editor of choice and make these changes. Now, what I'm going to do, because I find that live coding is fraught with error, I have already, I've already prepared a set of patches. So you can imagine that I just went in, I did my work, right, in my editor of choice. Maybe it's Notepad. And now I'm going to go back to desktop, and we can see in the changes view, it lists the changes that I made. Now, you could do all this in the Git command line, but one nice thing where I feel like the desktop application excels is when you create commits, it's really nice to group commits logically based on what they're changing, rather than doing a bunch of work and then committing it all as, hey, YOLO, this is all one bit. If you keep them nice, tight, and logical, there are actually benefits down the road, not just for people who are reading it, but if you ever use a command like git bisect, which can do a binary search through your commit history to find a bug, like it's nice when your commits are nice and tight and logically grouped. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to uncheck views main.jsx, and I'll just go ahead and check in everything else, some design stuff, and commit that. But with main, I can actually select individual lines and say, you know what, I just want to commit that change or that set of change. If I click in this little gutter here, I can select a block. So I might say commit this as one logical commit, change the header to header tags, and commit that. And what you'll see is that that change now has been committed and it's no longer in my changes view. And then I can commit this block separately, or I can just go ahead and check here and commit the rest. Hopefully you have better commit messages than I do. And then I can go ahead and I can publish this branch. So I click that, and that's pushing the branch up to github.com. And now that it's there, I can go to the branch menu, and you'll notice here we actually do accelerator keys, so we try to have keyboard navigation for just about anything. So Alt-B will bring up the branch, and I can go to compare on GitHub, and you can see what shortcut that corresponds to. And that brings up the compare view. And so then from there, I can create a pull request and say, hey, try this instead. So you're going to have to use your imagination here and pretend that that's Don and not me, but we'll go there. So let's actually try these changes that Don, the designer, made. And we can see, oh, that looks better. One last thing about desktop that I want to point out is that because it's an Electron app, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Node, things you know, you can do things like open up the view, toggle developer tools, or Control-Shift-I. So as if you were in Google Chrome, and you get your developer tools right there in the bar. So you can actually run our app, and you can explore our HTML, our CSS. You can actually run JavaScript in the console here against the app. And you can really get a deep sense of how our app is running. And the same is true for Atom as well. So, OK. So we're going to switch. Let's see. So that was the workflow of Don, the designer, working well with the developer team. So now we have Frederick, the front-end developer, and I need to make some changes to the Node site, the Electron site. And I'm going to open this in Atom. So let's see, Atom dot. So I'm running the version of Atom, the latest beta that was just released last week. Let's see, did it? Oh, there it is. And down here, it's kind of hard to see because it's a little small, but I'm actually going to switch to this Haack tries the code branch. So we have a little branch switcher right down there. And one thing you can see down here, I'll zoom in there. You can see that it tells you like what my Git status is. So I'm one commit behind behind what's on on GitHub.com, and I'm one ahead also what's on GitHub.com. Meaning I have a local commit that I haven't pushed. What's cool here is that I can go to the GitHub pane, and we can see that there are tool pull requests associated with them. So oh, I see. So I'll click one of these. So normally you might have one pull request associated with the branch. And so when you go to this pane, you can actually see the pull request that already exists for this branch. And it says, hi, Frederick, trying to be a helpful pointy hair boss here and write some code to provide an error message for empty tasks. Could you take a look at this? I have no idea what I'm doing. All right, so we're going to help the manager out again. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull this changes. So again, I'm going to try to zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. So I can just click on this down arrow, and you see it gives me a menu to pull or push. So I'm going to pull first. And let's see what happened. Uh-oh, we got an error. It says we have merge conflicts. So according to XKCD, what I do next is I delete the project and reclone it and start all over. Well, not anymore. With Atom, I can click on here, and oh wait, yep, there we go. And we can see here that the merge conflicts are highlighted for us, and we have a way of easily picking which change do we want. Do we want the one we pulled down, or do we want the one that we have locally? So I'll just go ahead and click Use Me there. But not only do we have the ability to pick the change, we can also go in here and just edit with everything. So if I wanted this to be failure versus failed, I can edit it, and then I can pick Use Me and Use Me. Now I've merged all the conflicts, so I can double-click this. Oh, wait, whoops. Oh, I forgot to save. So that's a tricky thing. You got to remember to save after you resolve the conflict. So now I can double-click this, and I can hit Commit. And I've resolved those merge conflicts. Now I've committed those changes. And I'm going to make some more changes here. And once again, I'm cheating by I have my changes prepared ahead of time. This is my Julia Childs moment, where I just take the cooked turkey out of the oven. Nobody's a Julia Childs fan here, huh? All right, that's fine. So here we see, Adam has picked up this set of unstaged changes. Now I can go in and I can make commits, but I can also do partial commits, just like we did with desktop. So here I'll select those changes and right-click and stage that selection. And you can see here that these stage changes are there. I can commit that, so commit stage changes. And voila, the rest of the changes are still in here. I can commit the rest. So I can stage all of it by clicking that, but since it's just one file, I can double-click to stage it and commit the rest. So you get nice control of creating commits right from within Atom. You don't have to leave if that fits the style of development that you prefer. OK. And now that I've made these changes, I can go back down here. I'll zoom in here. And you can see that I'm 4 commits ahead of what's on GitHub.com, because I pulled down that one commit that I was behind. And I hit that, hit push. And now my commits will be up there on GitHub.com. And let's go to the GitHub preview, and we can see. I wonder if I could see. Oh, there it is. I can navigate there, and I can see my most recent commits. OK. All right, so that's the front-end Electron. But this front-end Electron app needs to talk to a web service. And so I built a web API using ASP.NET Core, ASP.NET MVC Core. It's the new MVC stack from Microsoft, because I was kind of curious to see how far it's come along. In a previous life, I worked at Microsoft on ASP.NET MVC, so I thought I'd see what the new rage is. And so we're going to navigate to the API. So this is also up on GitHub. So we have to-do-app and to-do-API. And one of the things I want to show is this clone or download button here. And you can see that there's this open in Visual Studio. So if you have the Visual Studio extension installed and you've logged into it, into GitHub with it, we light up this button because we now know that you can support this. And when you click this, you can see it will open it in Microsoft Visual Studio. So again, this is when I mentioned earlier the bridge, this is what I'm talking about, how we can take this experience in a browser and seamlessly pull it down into your local machine. And we'd like to extend this experience to other editors down the road. One of the things here, it's a little different from desktop. It doesn't start cloning it automatically. It populates the clone dialog, and then I can start getting to work on this repository right from Visual Studio. I happen to already have opened it because I didn't trust that the Wi-Fi would be fast enough. Or actually, wait, there it is. I already have it cloned. So we have this. So I'm in Visual Studio, and again, it's an IDE where, if you're not familiar with it, a lot of it almost provides everything you could ever want as a developer all in one package. And developers who tend to use Visual Studio like to stay in Visual Studio. So I'm going to go to the GitHub pane, and you can see here that there's a list of pull requests. If you're in a repo, we know what repo it is. We look on GitHub.com, we pull down the pull requests, and we list them right here. A little bit different behavior from Atom, but we're working to make a lot of these experiences more and more similar as we move further. What's nice about this is, as you can imagine, I might want to check out the code in this pull request, so I can go click on this pull request, and then I can check out this pull request right there. And that's going to check out that branch and bring that code down to my local machine. Now I'm going to make some changes there. Oh, I got to make sure that I switch to the right project. OK. So Beatrice is the backend developer. Now we've made some changes. And I can go to this Team Explorer. And the reason, or let's go to this little house here. You can see one of the tricky aspects of extending someone else's IDE is that you have to work within their ecosystem. And what's interesting here is that this pane here is called the Team Explorer pane for historical reasons. And we're trying to fit GitHub in there. So the changes view is actually their functionality. That's not us. But as you can imagine, pull requests, that's us. And so we've tightly integrated an experience that really feels native. So when I go to here and click this, this is all Visual Studio. It shows me the diff. I can fix the blank error handling and create the commit here. So again, that's still a functionality that's specific to Visual Studio. But when I go to the pull request, I can create new one. And I can have this change report, pick the branch that I want to target. I'll just go ahead and target this. Test PR. Now, this is all GitHub integration that we've built into Visual Studio that I'm showing right there. All right. So now we're going to go to the Gabriella, the game developer. For some reason, this team decided that it wanted to put an Easter egg in the Electron app and have a full game in there. It's really, we all know that was just contrived so I could demo Unity, but let's work with me here. So this is a game called Dat Boy, and I'm going to run it real quick. And you can see here that I can actually move this around. This is all Unity, but I'm noticing that there's this Evil Dawn. That's Dawn the designer in there. That's Evil Dawn, and we want to replace that with someone a little more friendly. What's cool here is that you can see I have history integrated here, branches, changes. All of this is the GitHub package for Unity that we developed. But we also added one of the things that's unique to game development that you and I may not deal with as much is that they deal with a lot of large binary assets. And working with large binary assets in Git can be a real mismatch, right? And what you want is a way to, if I'm working on a really large art asset, I don't want other people pushing their versions of that while I'm working on mine because there's no good way to merge those changes together. So I actually want to lock it. And so what we did was we integrated Git LFS, or Git Large File System, in Unity. So when I'm down here, I can actually right-click here, and I can request a lock. And I'll zoom out. And you can see here that put a little icon there. So that's now locked, and nobody else can change that file while I'm doing these changes. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to, again, a Julie Childs moment here. Let's see. OK. So I changed it to Holiday Dawn. I feel like that's a little more festive and happier. And now I can go in here, and I can commit all the changes that I made. Change to Holiday Dawn. And then there's a way to push it, but I forgot. Oh, OK. In any case, so we're trying to reach new audiences. So GitHub for Unity is currently still in what we consider a preview or alpha stage. So it isn't quite as polished as the experience you'll find in Visual Studio yet. So that's Unity. OK, and there you have it. The To-Do app is complete with a delightful Easter egg. And the team lived happily ever without ever a bug in all their code. But before I forget, there's one more thing, important thing that I want to mention. The tools that I've shown, all of these tools, except for GitHub for Unity, which will be open source later, all these tools are open source today. You can go to these sites on GitHub, and you can see the source code. You can play with the source code. Atom is a full-featured text editor, so the source code can be challenging, but it's also broken up into a lot of packages. It's highly extensible. We set out to build the most extensible text editor possible, where you could leverage your existing HTML, CSS, JavaScript skills to extend it. So that's a great example of a text editor, but the packages are kind of interesting if you want to write your own package. Electron is open source, and desktop, one of the cool things about desktop as an open source application is we've seen a lot of apps on Electron. Early apps were kind of like, hey, I'll take my website and I'll host it in Electron, and now I have a desktop app. And that's certainly a quick way to get your app running on the desktop. But with desktop, I'm overloading these terms. With GitHub Desktop, we really wanted to build an app from the ground up that felt native as much as possible, that used the paradigms unique to each platform. So when you run it on Windows and run it on Mac, you'll notice that the menus are different. They fit the local paradigms of what a Windows menu and a Mac menu should be like. And it's not 100% high fidelity, native looking, but we're really close. And it's a great example of how you build an app like that using Electron. And like I said, the GitHub for Unity is not open source, but the GitHub extension for Visual Studio is open source. So in the end, we hope that these tools make your own workflows better. And if there are ways that we can make your life even better when working with GitHub, let us know. Thank you.